Yeah, well, the victim-victomizer narrative only works if you assume that you're a victim.
Right.
And as soon as you assume that you're a victimizer, well, then it's not so much fun. And one of the things, I wrote the foreword for the new version of Solzhenitsyn's Gulag Archipelago, the abridged version. It came out November 1st. And I was trying to figure out why the Russian Revolution went wrong so rapidly. Because it went wrong right from the beginning. And Solzhenitsyn quotes this guy named, I think his name was Walter Latsis, if I remember correctly. I got the Latsis part right anyways. And he said, when you're interrogating a member of the bourgeoisie to decide whether they, whether they constitute an enemy of the state, you don't give any credibility to such niceties as individual guilt or innocence. All you care about is their group and their background and their economic status. And if they're in the wrong group, the bourgeoisie, then that's it. That's the end of them. And Solzhenitsyn comments not just the end of them, but the end of their children and their grandchildren as well. And Latsis was eventually executed by Stalin. Somebody wrote me and just told me that after I wrote the foreword. But one of the things I figured out was this, and this is really worth thinking about, man. So the intersectional claim is that each person has more than one group identity. So fundamentally, if you're going to calculate their victim status, then you have to calculate it across all the different groups that they might be victims in. And so, maybe, who knows, a Native American is one form of victim in this line of thinking, but a Native American victim is, female is like twice the victim, or however you would calculate that mathematically. It's like, okay, and maybe you can be put into 6 different groups. We already talked about that a little bit. But here's the bloody rub. If I put you in 6 groups, in one of those groups you're a victimizer. You can bloody well bet on it. And then here's the next rule. If you're a victimizer among any possible dimension of analysis, then it's the gulag for you. And so that's the fundamental danger of that group identity, victimizer-victim narrative, is that you fragment your identity in multiple dimensions. You'll find out that you're a victimizer. And then everyone's a criminal. And then everyone's guilty. That's exactly what happened in Russia. And then you think, well, wait a minute. There were a bunch of people who were really compassionate about the poor. It's like, let's say, just for the sake of argument, that at the beginning of the Russian Revolution, that 20% of the communists were really concerned about the poor. Maybe we could say 50%. Just to be arbitrary about it. The other 50% were jealous and resentful about anyone who had anything more than they did. All right, now that you put those 2 groups head to head in a battle for 4 years and see who's standing at the end. Even if you are one of those utopians who actually cares for the dispossessed, when the revolution comes, you can bloody well be sure that your head's going to be first on the chopping block. Because the people who are motivated by hate are going to be a lot more vicious in their attempts to eradicate than you're going to be, what would you call it, effective in your attempts to save. That whole game, that whole identity politics game, that is dangerous beyond belief. And it's predicated fundamentally on resentment and the desire to devolve people back into a tribal antagonism.
I think it's so important that you talk about it this way. And I think it's really interesting when I see the resistance to you talking about it this way and how many people are unwilling to look at it as this multi-level historical sort of record that you could look and see how this played out, and you can look and see what's going on right now with these control games that people are playing socially.